The first thing I would like to do, good evening to you all.
This meeting is being recorded.
For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brad Roth. I am the faculty advisor to the Pre-Law Student Association, as well as being the director of undergraduate studies in the Department of Political Science. And welcome you to this event that will give you a full panorama of the Michigan Law School experience and the various different possibilities that there are. The first thing I'd like to do is to allow for a greeting here from the Pre-Law Student Association. So Jenna, why don't you make some remarks?
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Jenna Asmar. I'm a senior at Wayne State. I'm majoring in marketing at the business school, and I'm going to graduate this semester. I'm the president of the Pre-Law Student Association that was started by Dr. Roth. Him and I were working together a lot over the past few semesters to do events like this. And we're really excited to have another one with you guys. For the students who are here, feel free to put on your cameras so we can feel more connected, and come with questions. Write down questions anytime you have them. Type them in the chat, or you can even unmute yourself or raise your hand and we'll notice it right away. This is being recorded so you can access it afterwards. And if you are interested in joining PLSA and you're not already in it, please put your email in the chat. I think that's it. Cameron, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi guys, my name's Cameron. I'm also I'm a junior. I'm the PR director of PLSA. I'm in the business school as well, just like Jenna, majoring in marketing, but I have plans to go to law school. And yeah, so like she said, you don't have to put your cameras on, but if you want to, you're more than welcome to. And hopefully this is a great event. Thanks so much, guys, for coming.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And now, without further ado, we have here 5 representatives of the student bodies of the various law schools in the state. So from Wayne Law, we have Parker Feldman and Marcus Lee. And then we have from the University of Michigan, Dalia Ibrahim. And from Michigan State University, Camry Hogans. And from the joint JD LLB program of the University of Detroit, Mercy, and the University of Windsor, we have David, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get this right, but Pitawanakwat?
That is correct.
Okay. So the first thing I would like to do is to have people go around and introduce themselves and say something about how law school has been for them as they've made the transition. In some cases, an immediate transition from undergrad to law school. In some cases, with a substantial gap. To say something about your path, how you happen to end up where you are, or whatever else you'd like to tell us about yourselves. So why don't we start with Camry?
Oh, okay. Never mind. Wait, Camry or Camry?
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Go.
Yeah. Like you said, my name is Camry Hogans. I'm a 3L at Michigan State College of Law. I can say like my path was kind of weird. It was just like, I don't know what else I'm gonna do. I liked political science. I took a lot of political science classes with Professor Brad Roth, and I was like, you know what, let's go to law school. And it's definitely been a great experience. I met a lot of people. I especially love how we're all in the trenches and we kind of have like our own language, our own jokes. And it's been great kind of just like learning how to dissect the law, kind of like being on that end of being like kind of a lawmaker, being an interpreter of law. It kind of gives you a kind of a sense of power, just a little bit. But I've been enjoying myself, and I'm excited to see what's gonna happen after I graduate.
What year are you in now?
This is my 3rd year.
Okay. And do you have a clear plan of what's going to happen after law school?
I don't, but I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful.
All right. Let's go to David.
Hey, everybody. So I graduated from Wayne State in December of 2018. I knew I wanted to go to law school. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I think it was just a couple months after that. The University of Windsor was hosting the World Indigenous Law Conference. And I'm an Indigenous person myself. I'm a Anishinaabe person from this territory. And so I thought I'd go check it out. And so I went over there just a couple months after I graduated. I talked to the dean, and that I really got the impression that they wanted me there, that they needed me there, because I have a lot of unique experiences. Everybody here is an expert in their experiences. And so, they convinced me that that's where I should go. And long story short, I applied, I got in, and 3 years have gone by pretty quickly. I'm just a couple months away from graduating. I'm going to be specializing in Indigenous law here, stateside and in Canada. I've already got a job lined up. I'm going to be working with Indigenous clients on a reserve about an hour north of here called Walpole Island. It's on the Canadian side of the border. And that's my past 4 years in a nutshell. So.
Okay. Let's hear from Marcus.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marcus Lee. I graduated from Wayne State in 2008, poli-sci. I was my major. Also served with student council and was the president. After that, I did a little work for a bankruptcy and real estate firm in Atlanta, Georgia. Just took some time off, making sure I wanted to go to law school, work for various. I'm sorry? Work for various firms like State Farm. I'm back here at law school. I'm a first year, taking contracts and civil procedure. So I'm a part-time student because I work and go to school at the same time.
Okay. Parker.
Hey everyone, I'm Parker Feldman. I am a 3L at Wayne. It's my last year. I think of the group, I took the shortest path to law school. I actually was in a 3-and-3 program that made my undergraduate 3 years and then put me straight into law school with my first year of law school kind of double counting as my first year, as my last year in undergraduate study. I'm involved in the law review and the moot court program. I hold e-board positions on both of those. Took me a really long time in law school to figure out what I wanted to do. I'm still very unsure what I want to do, and that's scary as a third-year student. I have plans to be an incoming associate at Jones Day in Detroit, but I also have pending clerkship applications, hopefully going to get one of those and just kind of explore my love for appellate work a little bit more. Yeah, other than that, I don't think there's a whole lot interesting. I was a poli-sci major. I don't know if that necessarily matters, but it is how I got here. So there we go.
All right. And finally, Dahlia.
Yeah, hi, my name is Dahlia. I'm a 2L at Michigan. I went to Wayne State with Dr. Roth. I double majored in political science and philosophy. Really loved my time at Wayne State. I really miss Wayne State, actually. But I always thought I was going to do law, very passionate about human rights. For the longest time, I thought I was going to do international law. My mom's Moroccan, my dad's Egyptian. I have all my family there. Like, I always thought that was kind of my path. And then the pandemic happened and it kind of made me have to look a little bit more locally at some of the human rights issues. And I think the criminal justice system is like the biggest of that. And so I am really drawn to public defense and indigent defense in general. So those that can't afford attorneys, like I think the law is like super elite, and I think Michigan is a school that's also super like. I want to bridge the gap between some of that like upper, but this in the system that we've created. I just want to kind of fix it. So I'm doing public defense in Colorado this summer, and that's probably what I'll do after law school. But I'm not entirely sure yet. I just know I want to do human rights in some capacity.
So maybe the first thing to throw out to you all is sort of what's been the hardest thing to get used to about law school? What's been the biggest challenge, and particularly the adjustment from being an undergrad to being a law student? Anyone? Go ahead, let's jump in.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I just know for me, people tell you before law school that it's going to be so much reading and so much case briefing and all of that. And I really did kind of take that for granted because I was like, oh, I'm a fast reader, or oh, I comprehend information easily. My first couple of months of law school, I felt like I was reading a foreign language. It was completely different to me. It just did not seem natural. And I think like learning what professors really want from you and what you're actually supposed to be getting from the reading was a hard adjustment to make, because to me, I was like, okay, cool. I need to know, the pertinent facts of the case. And then I had one professor ask me, why do you think the court decided to include what brand the water bottle was on the bus? And I'm like, I have no clue. I just know that she was hit by the bus. Like, I don't know like what the issue is here. But I guess delving below surface level comprehension was the biggest adjustment I think I made, at least during my first year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because even now I have teachers, you'll read the case and then he'll ask you a question that's just, he's like, I know this wasn't in the case, but why do you think the court said this? And we're just like, how are we supposed to know that? That they didn't put that in the case. How are we supposed to understand like what the judge is thinking? And it's like you have to like kind of go beyond what the case is saying, kind of like put yourself in the judge's shoes to like see where his reasoning is coming from. That's definitely been an adjustment.
Who else?
I I don't think this was so much an adjustment for me. Like I feel like I've always had a really good public speaking ability, and I'm pretty good at talking with people. At least I've always thought so. But I feel like a lot of my peers really struggled, especially that first year, with being what we know as being cold called. When your professor just calls you right out of the blue to answer a question that you may or may not have studied for. A lot of people freeze up when they're tasked with public speaking. And so for anybody that is going or thinking about law school, I would highly encourage you to take a public speaking course and getting over that fear, because it is a challenge. And I think it's actually one of the top personal fears for most people in the United States. So
Okay. Other thoughts? What, Marcus, you're gonna say?
Oh, just the reading. I put in, I'm sure, between 8 and 10 hours for one class for a week, for one class. And it's definitely been an adjustment. I didn't do that quite that much studying in undergrad. And so I definitely have to rearrange my schedule and try to fit in the reading between, work and other responsibilities. So I'd say that's the biggest adjustment.
I would also add one more thing. I think I came into law school with like a glorified perception of what it was going to be, where I came in and I was like, cool, from day one, it's going to be, what I've seen on TV shows or what I've really, seen for it to be. And then to come into my con law class and just have it be a glorified history course. I felt somewhat like that sense of culture shock where you're thrown into an unnatural environment and you feel the need to adjust, but it's not like it just wasn't what I was expecting. So I would say tailor your expectations accordingly, that if you're really looking for that stereotypical media publicized lawyer experience, you're going to have to wait a couple years, because you get that out of your crim pro class, or a mock trial in moot court, and things like that you just don't have access to your first year. So like my main advice in that vein is just stay patient. It does get there eventually, just not maybe as soon as you may want it. So I guess that's my thought. I don't know if anyone disagrees, but that's exactly how I felt.
No, I definitely agree, because your first year, you're just studying towards the contracts and you look at Legally Blonde, and her first year, they're asking her these complicated questions, and you're like, that's not even what you learned your first year. Like, you're learning about if somebody falls, who are you blaming? Like, or con law, like textualism and stuff like that. Like, dear the hell, yeah.
So Dahlia, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think also one of the hardest things for me in law school was there's so many unspoken norms, and nobody talks about so many of them. So like the biggest thing that was a change for me is like, it's a hard curve. Like there is the smallest amount of A's that can be given. And then everyone else, you get like this arbitrary grade from a 6-hour exam. And that's the only grade you have the entire semester. The whole grade is that one exam. And it's interesting because nobody talks about their grades. So, and there's no examples for how you should have done better. And so there's a lack of feedback, and there's a general notion that like, you need to figure everything out, like almost on your own, like briefing. No one tells you how to brief. No professor walks you through it. I think legal practice is maybe the most practical, or like legal writing in other schools, I'm sure it's called, is the most practical legal course you take in your first year, but everything else is kind of just thrown at you, and you are supposed to adjust. And so the best advice I would give is to find someone in law school, like in the school that you're going to, that you can like ask the really dumb questions to, because you're going to have them, and that's okay. And we all had them, and you should ask them. And don't, you are not alone in that. And everybody's just as confused as you. They're just good at faking it. So
I cannot overstate how much I agree with Dahlia. Just having a group of like 4 or 5 like-minded people that are like, you don't understand this either, do you? That is what got me through my first year. 100%. Just having the peace of mind to know that other people are struggling with you. Because it is entirely new to everyone. No one goes into law school having it figured out. So just having like a sounding board to just bounce ideas off of, that's so important.
So one thing that's clearly very different about law school from undergrad is the nature of the law school exam, and so just to follow up on that point, typically, of course, these courses are 100% based upon the final exam, and the final exam is of a very peculiar style that people who are undergrads would not have much familiarity with. So I wonder if people might want to talk about how to prepare for these exams, what the exams are like, whether to be scared by the exams, any of that.
You definitely, I don't think anybody should be scared of them, because I feel like it's just like, it's the teacher kind of makes you nervous, but it's easy to get through it if you understand what the professors want. And it's also easy if you connect with upperclassmen. This was a big help for me. Like if I would connect with, when I first got there, I connected with a couple of 3Ls and 2Ls. And you just ask them like, how was this professor? How was their exam? Maybe do you have an outline? Those are so important. Outlines save lives. You ask them if they have an outline from that specific professor, and just any tips that they have, because like like they said, no one knows what they're doing. And so like a 3L like me, I'm happy to help a 1L coming in. What do you need? You have this professor, well, this is how he likes to grade. This is what he's looking for, because no one knows what they're doing. And I honestly don't think it's fair how you kind of just get thrown in the middle of the ocean and you kind of have to like fake it, like fake like you know what you're doing. So that's my number one suggestion, to always find those upperclassmen because they're always ready to help and they always have, some good advice to give you for those exams.
Parker?
Yeah, I know Camry briefly touched on this, but I think it's so important to learn the professor and not the course. I mean, it's so important, obviously, to learn the course because you're going to take the bar, you're going to need to know these things, but you'll have bar prep, or you will study for these types of things. Where I just know, like, for example, my civil procedure professor taught Civ Pro in a completely different way than I think every other Civ Pro professor did, where it was a much bigger focus on big ideas and social implications and stuff. And the final was just not like, oh, how many days do you have to file an appeal? Rather, it was, how does the appellate process affect the little guy? It was really important to my success in my first year to learn what the expectations were and I guess the testing criterion were for my specific professor, rather than focus on, I need to know every rule of civil procedure. I need to know, every section of the Constitution, like that's actually going to help you in con law, which it's not. So don't worry about that. But
nobody even reads the Constitution in con law.
Exactly. So it was definitely strategizing for me, where you are on this forced curve. You do know you're in a class of 70 or 80 people and only 5 of you are going to get A's. Like it's a tough reality to face. And when you know that you want to do well, I think to maximize that potential, a lot of that is just anticipating what are you going to be tested on? What have people tested on, your professor? What main issues have they touched on in the past 10 years every single year? Just that anticipation aspect, I think was really pertinent to me.
David?
Yeah, I just want to double down on what was just said about strategizing. I've never gone into a test in law school without having an idea of what was going to be on it. I mean, you're going to have a review session. I'm 99% certain you're going to have a review session. Your professor's going to let you know the expectations and then follow those expectations to a T. If they tell you that you should spend 20 minutes on this particular section of the exam, then you need to be timing yourself for 20 minutes and not spend a minute more. And so that's the best way to prepare is, just focus on what the professor tells you and then move forward with that information. As far as what you're being tested on, I've never had an exam in law school that was easy. I think in undergrad, a lot of people get a sense of relief when your professor says, hey, it's multiple choice. Well, in law school, 3 out of the 4 answers might be really good, and you have to choose the best one. And that is when that type of test becomes very, very difficult. And you might spend, 10 minutes on one multiple choice question that you were only supposed to spend a minute and a half on. And so that's where it becomes important to, just strategize for each and every test. But, I wouldn't stress about it too much. Like it's already been said, everybody's in the same boat. A lot of the times you'll be confused on a lot of the same things. And you'll be all right, especially with the curve.
Elliot?
Yeah, 2 thoughts just came to me. The first is that the exam, what you get on your final grade, I feel like this is really important to say because you end up worrying a lot about your exams. And it sucks because you take this stupid, like I said, it's arbitrary and you got to call it what it is. Law school's a game. It's a game and you're just there to play it. And we hopefully do things with our degrees, but like it is just a game. It's gatekeeping and it's elite. And you're there to, if you want to shake the system up, you got to get through it in some way. So, don't let those grades define you. You'll hear it a million times, and I won't be the first person to say it today. And then you'll hear it a million times in law school. And then your school will be like, oh, your grades don't matter. But if you want a clerkship, you have to get all. So I'm telling you right now, your grades don't matter, not because they don't actually matter, who cares about the real world, but like good people recognize good people everywhere. And really what matters is that first job and the connections you make. And so if you have good connections and then you're able to get that first job, what's on your resume is your degree, where you got it from, I guess, if that even matters. Okay. And then where you worked, which is infinitely more important than anything that you could have. An A on Civ Pro is not going to make you a good lawyer. I promise you that. So just, it has to be said, because this shit is crazy. And they'll have you tripping. They'll have you tripping, but don't trip.
Well, there's more to be said about what the career significance of grades may or may not be, but there's certainly a lot of ways to become integrated into the legal profession that are not key to certainly how well you did in your civil procedure class. One of this sort of leads to my next thought, which is, as an undergrad in a university, you have this array of extracurricular activities, groups like PLSA and so forth. But they're really kind of disconnected for the most part from your curricular activities and from your kind of direct route into a profession. Whereas law school is very different from that. That what looks like superficially like extracurricular activity is in some sense co-curricular activities. And so I wonder what, a number of you I know have had experience with various kinds of student organizations and other kinds of work extracurricularly in law school. And I wonder if you could speak to the role of that. David?
Yeah, it's super important, no doubt. When I got to law school, especially in like that fog of your first year, I was kind of worried about like what how do I get involved? Like I wanted to be involved in so many different things right away. That was not the right approach. I needed to be focusing on my studies. But what I discovered throughout law school is a lot of these opportunities literally just fall into your lap. Like it just happens. I'm in my third year now. I'm the president of the Shkabewasug Student Law Society, which is the Native American Law Society at the University of Windsor. And we've done a lot of great things over the year. We've held round dances, we've had protests. We actually got involved in a land back case over on Eastern Ontario over last summer. And a lot of those connections that I made with that group, they were super important. They're how I landed my first job. So it can't be understated. Networking is going to be super important in law school, not as important as you studying and passing your classes, but you definitely want to be involved, and there's not going to be any shortage of opportunity for you to do so. So I wouldn't rush it.
Parker?
Yeah, I know it's absolutely different for everyone depending on what they want to do. I honestly wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do, so I decided to do everything, which I will tell you is not the best decision I've ever made. It made my second year of law school the worst year of my entire life. But it was still manageable if you want to do everything. I did law review and moot court and was the president of two different clubs, including the Student Board of Governors, which was just not, I can't say it was manageable. I sacrificed a lot to be able to do that. And I am here to tell you that you don't need to do all of that. There are some things where, obviously your grades need to come first, but the whole stigma behind you need to be on law review to be successful. I think it's so overfluted. It's not something that's entirely true. If you're not passionate about appellate work or criminal work, don't do moot court or mock trial, just for a little tip. Yeah, Dahlia, I completely agree. I joined Law Review being like, oh, I kind of have to do this. And then I did it for a year. And I really disliked it other than writing my own note. And then I got sucked into doing it a second year because I have friends on it that were very persuasive and I'm not having a fun time. So do I think it helped me in like my application to bigger law firms? Like, yeah, I guess. But I think that like your GPA and like how you carry yourself and how you interview is a much bigger kicker than these other co-curriculars are. So I would just say if you're going to do something and you're going to devote so much time to it, be passionate about it. Where I love moot court, I actually just came from a practice before this. Like it's my favorite thing. Um, I've been also dealing with journal stuff all day that makes me want to tear my hair out. So, you know, you're still the master of your time and allocate it how you want to, because otherwise this is just not going to be an enjoyable experience for you.
I'm not sure that people are aware of what moot court is, so maybe you can explain that.
Sure. So you have mock trial, which is like a trial level, interviewing witnesses, voir dire, things like that. You know, the Legally Blonde stuff that you see. And then you have moot court, which is strictly appellate level work, which is appeals before either, you know, one of the federal circuit courts of appeals or the Supreme Court, normally an issue of law rather than an issue of fact. Um, it's an appellate advocacy group where, you know, you structure arguments and you kind of mock argue in front of panels of judges who are pretending to be either a court of appeals or the Supreme Court. In my opinion, at least, most good moot court arguments are just a constant conversation between the oralist and the judge. It's kind of a back and forth, um, where it's, hey, you know, this is what I think the law says. And then the judge is like, yeah, I don't know if that's what the law says. And then you say, well, Your Honor, this is actually why I think it is what it says. It's hard to sum up without actually seeing it. I know I'm not doing it justice, but it is quite fun. I at least super enjoy it. But that's how I would briefly put it into words.
I think you described it pretty good. But yeah, I definitely agree with the passion part. Like I joined a lot of groups, but it was just kind of like the Black Law Student Association. I was the vice president just because like that was my passion to making sure that Black students at law school, you know, knew what they were doing, they had a good path, and I wanted to help any way I can. I joined moot court. It was kind of like a challenge to myself actually, because I had took advocacy my first year and I did terrible. Advocacy is basically kind of like a mini moot court, where you kind of like argue in front of your teacher, and she has like little different panels, and I did terrible because I had never been good at public speaking. So I said, you know, I'm going to audition for moot court, and I actually got it. I mean, I actually got it on a team, and we did really well, and it was very enjoyable just to kind of like do that for me. Like it was a skill that I was working on, something that I was passionate about. I was not interested in law review. I looked at the application and I said, what the heck is this? I'm not doing it. And at Michigan State, they definitely, they drill it in your head. They drill it in your head saying, if you don't do law review, you're probably not going to get a job. And it was kind of like, why would you tell a group of students this? Like, and not even everybody can be on law review. So it didn't make sense to me, but I wasn't going to force it because like Parker said, like I didn't want to be miserable. I'm already doing classes, I'm already doing readings, and I wanted to do something outside of school that I was passionate about, something that I can control, something that, you know, if I didn't want to go to the event, I don't have to. But if I do, you know, I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to have a good time. And those are the times I'm going to look back on law school like, oh yeah, you know, Rumble in the Jungle, or, you know, I hung out with this classmates this time, or we went bowling or something like that. That's really important to have in law school, just those times where you're doing stuff for yourself.
Diane?
I completely agree with Camry. I think it's so important to have like a good school life balance. And so like something big for me was I weightlift and I make sure that that's something that I have not stopped doing. And I actually competed this past weekend, like, and that's a priority for me. It's at like some point, it's like, well, I can only learn so much evidence. And at another point, I still have to be me. So I'm going to go do that because that makes me feel good. And then also I would say if your school offers clinics, you 100% should, if you're interested in client interaction, having like a client focused approach to law and not just doctrinals, which are those like staple law classes like contracts and Civ Pro. Clinics are life-changing. I mean, I did the human trafficking clinic. I had 10 human trafficking survivors as my clients, all different types of stories, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, all different ages. Right? It was such an incredible experience. And then now I'm in the juvenile justice clinic. I have clients I have a 13-year-old, I have a 9-year-old, I have a 17-year-old, and I have a 54-year-old. He was someone that was sentenced to as a juvenile to life and was recently resentenced and got out. And so now he needs a lot of help assimilating into his day-to-day life. So I would 100% recommend doing some sort of clinic. And then law school is super expensive. I was really upset with my tuition. Even though I got a scholarship, I was not happy with being in debt. I'm $100,000 in debt right now. And if I had continued on this path, I would have been $210,000 in debt. Yeah, let's take a pause. That's a lot of money. So I am a graduate student instructor. I applied vehemently to every graduate student instructor position. So now I teach undergrad and I make the University of Michigan pay for my tuition. So
what do you teach?
I teach philosophy.
Oh.
And I love it. It is like, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like, I often think I should have been a teacher instead of a lawyer, but it brings me so much joy. It takes up a lot of my time. Like I'm pressed for a minute these days, but nothing beats them paying my tuition. I'll say that. That's all I gotta say.
Other thoughts? Marcus, you've been fairly quiet, and perhaps something about your experience as a part-time student would be of particular significance to people. What's it like juggling being in school with working in that context, and how does being a part-time student differ, you think, from being a full-time student?
Yeah, I was full-time in undergrad, and so it's definitely a difference going to school part-time because you're constantly driving to the university when we have classes on campus, and going to work also. So I just have to find time to get my reading in when I can. I don't get the opportunity to make too many. I think I've been to maybe 1 or 2 extracurricular things on campus since I've been there. So I don't really have too much time for that, but yeah, it's definitely a juggling act, I guess you could say. You definitely have to watch the clock, whatever you're doing, and have a job that doesn't mind being flexible with your hours. That's kind of the biggest thing if you're going to be part-time.
So maybe people can talk a little bit about the path from being an undergrad to being a law student, things that people you think ought to know about the application process, about the LSAT, about faculty recommendations, about just all of the mechanics of doing that, or just the question of figuring out whether or not to go to law school and what law school to choose. So what sorts of experiences might you be able to impart? Parker?
Yeah, that's a big ask. That's a lot of super large questions. I guess in terms of prepping for law school, obviously if you're dead set on it, secure who you want to write these recommendations pretty early before you apply. The last thing that you want is someone feeling rushed writing your recommendation letter. And also find people that you really connect with, not someone that you got an A in their Com 101 class, so you feel like they're going to write you a good letter. Odds are they'll just have a standard thing that they send out about you. I think at least from talking with law school admissions over the past couple of years, like what really stands out to people are the personal letters that they receive from these professors. You know, if they can speak to an individual experience or a seminar that you just did an exemplary job in, you know, that's what stands out to these people. In terms of prepping for the LSAT, I think I did well on the LSAT. I actually took it 2 times. I think the most helpful thing ever was just taking LSATs, like released full practice tests, just taking those and being just really drill sergeant-esque about them, and taking one day and then the next day reviewing all of the questions that I got wrong and why I got them wrong. And I think I was a little bit pigeonholed in the law schools that I could choose from because of the program that I was in, which dictated that I go to Wayne Law. That being said, I don't regret, you know, my experience and how it is, you know, here. But yeah, and I guess as a piece of general advice, no, David, I completely agree too. There's only so many ways that they can structure a logic game. There's only so many ways that they can say Sally plays golf after Mark on Wednesdays. You know, it's just not something that can be permutated in an amalgam of ways that's incomprehensible. But yeah, I think just as like a general thing for law school is as much as you feel like your major may prepare you, you know, you think you're political science and therefore you're going to know all of this history stuff, or you're English and therefore you're going to be the best writer. Throw all of those notions out the window. I don't know if other than like 2 classes that I really took in undergrad, as well as like writing my thesis, actually prepared me for law school. I don't think I had a leg up on anyone being a political science major. One of the best writers that I know in law school was an English major, but he claims that is strictly coincidental and that he had to completely unlearn the writing that he had before law school. Just don't go in with preconceived notions like that you're on a leg up or a leg down because of what you majored in. I think law school is an experience entirely in its own. And you just got to learn it as you go. So I guess that's general advice.
Any thoughts? LSATs or application processes, or anything else about your path from where you were to where you are? David?
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but you know, most of the application process, you've kind of got your thinking locked in a certain way where it's like, well, I need to you know, sell my character to this university. I need to convince them to let me in, right? But I kind of, you know, thought about it a different way when I was applying. I was actually looking for the school to sell itself to me. I wanted to know what these schools were doing because I already knew I wanted to go into Indigenous law, and not everybody has that luxury of knowing what they want to go into for sure. But, you know, I wanted to know what these schools were doing for Indigenous people. And so that's why I chose my program, because right before I applied, the University of Windsor had just hired 5 Indigenous faculty to the law school on tenure track. You know, that's a commitment to Indigenous people that most law schools are, you know, haven't made and probably won't make it at any time in the near future. And so whatever you might be interested in, whatever you might be interested in specializing in, you know, what is that school doing in that area? So you know, a lot of people say, go to the best law school you can go to. Yeah, for sure. If you go to Yale or Harvard, you're going to get a lot of opportunities. No doubt. I mean, that goes without saying. But I mean, I think you should go to the school that is the best fit for you, which might not always be, you know, the best school in the rankings, but hey.
Your thoughts? Another thing that, yeah, Cameron. Yep.
I was just someone asked a question in the chat, and I was just gonna speak
Yep.
to it
Good.
about the personal statement. For me, I think what made my statements stand out it was just how vulnerable I was. The writing was good because I've always been a good writer. But I think wasn't just like, oh, I want to go to law school because of this and that. Like I had went through a lot of struggles to get to law school. Like I was homeless at some point. Like I was just kind of like just really telling them what I really went through, not some kind of like just vague surface level, but what I really went through and my passion behind it and what I saw myself bringing to the law school and what the law school could give me. So it was just kind of like that vulnerable side. And it meant a lot to me when I got my application back and it was like a little handwritten part on the acceptance letter saying like it was so great just reading your story and learning about you and we're excited to have you. So I think that's really important just to kind of really think about what it means to be going to law school. Think about what it means and what you have done to get to this level. I'm not saying like everybody needs to struggle or to get into law school, but just really like put a lot of thought into your story and who you are as a person, because that's what they're looking for. They're trying to see who you are. Who is this person? What are they going to bring to law school? Are they going to thrive here? Like, do they have what it takes? So that's very important.
Okay, we've got Marcus, David, and Parker all looking to get in. So Marcus, go ahead.
One of the major components I'm sure you know about applying to law school is the LSAT. I went through Kaplan. I took their class, I think like a couple of times. It really helps because a lot of stuff that you see on the LSAT, like what they call formal logic, you've never seen before. It can be tough to pick up on if you just read the book. I learned a lot doing that. With the personal statement, I wrote a war story my dad told me because he served in Vietnam. So it can be something that you did, or it can be something that's just interesting. It doesn't necessarily have to be a story of your own. But I think you had also asked about personal or recommendation letters. Go with the professor you did good in their class. It'd be probably helpful if you like took a couple of classes with them because they know you a little better and they know you weren't just like a flash in the pan. You got like an A- or something, and so they're writing a letter for you. People, if you tell everybody that you're going to law school, generally you'll find somebody that'll say, "Hey, do you need a recommendation letter?" And they'll write one for you. So those would be my recommendations about applying to law school.
And David?
Yeah, that's a really good question that was asked in the chat. I'm currently one of the student representatives on the admissions committee, and just a little bit of insider knowledge is, everybody on the admissions committee, really thinks highly of community engagement. What are you doing outside of school? Do you spend 10, 20 hours at a soup kitchen every week? Well, then write about that. Write about your supervisor at the soup kitchen and get a letter of recommendation from them. I've always, kind of been an activist here in Detroit and kind of just been at the grassroots level. And so in my personal statement, I wrote, almost the entire thing about, being on the ground with people that are struggling. And a lot of the times, when you write about that type of stuff, it looks so good. It speaks well to your character, especially if you have like maybe poor grades or, not so good of an LSAT score. Talk about what you're doing for your community.
Yeah. Parker?
Yeah, I guess it's just like a final thing, and then I'll shut up about this. I think the thing that I've heard from people that work in admissions that is super important is just like remembering your why. Everyone that has applied to law school obviously wants to work in the legal field or wants this degree in some capacity, but why is it important to you? Why do you want it? And on top of that, why is this school, this specific school, I don't care if you're applying to 25 of them, why is that one the one that you think is going to help you best achieve what you want to achieve. I think there's a lot of copy and paste type personal statements that you can make about, you may have a very riveting personal statement about, your childhood or your want to practice law. But why is that school your outlet? Is it just because you fit within their GPA and LSAT criterion, or is there something unique about this opportunity that you don't think you can get somewhere else? And I know that that's obnoxious coming from someone who really only applied to Wayne, but it is something that I've heard quite often. And I think that it's important to keep that in mind for people that are applying to more than one places, especially other, super competitive schools. If you are scoring super well and you have a great GPA, why are you choosing, U of M rather than Stanford? Or why are you choosing, UPenn rather than some other school? Just your personal connection to that area can really distinguish your application.
Marcus, I don't know if your hand is up for wanting to speak or having spoken.
It was from having spoken, but I will say one more thing just to bridge from what Parker said. A bit of advice I heard at like a LSAT conference was that you should apply where you want to practice. So if you say you want to practice law in Denver, it's a good idea to apply to Denver schools, just because they teach, their reputation is strongest on their home turf, A, the law school, and B, they teach a lot of local law. Like in some of my classes, we look at Michigan statutes. So if you don't want to practice in Michigan, you're learning stuff that you're not really going to be using. So it's a good idea to apply to the law school where you want to practice.
Okay. We've got some questions starting to pop up in the chat, and rather than trying to sort of sort out stuff from the chat, be better to have people ask orally. Some of the stuff that Michael asked about has already been covered, but perhaps not enough of it. So Michael, do you want to unmute and say more about what you'd like to know, the panel?
Yeah, so I apologize. I showed up to this meeting a little late, so if these questions were already run over, then I wasn't here for it. But yeah, I was wondering regarding admission into law school, what specific, I know this is a very broad question, but what specifically do they look at? Is the extracurriculars important, or is it like 90-95% just your LSAT and your GPA? Because I want to know like how much I should prioritize this, because I've always been someone since high school who's always prioritized my grades over everything else. And I want to know if this is the appropriate path to continue. And like what classes specifically are looked at? Like, do they like classes like the law minor, like those law style classes, or do they want more philosophy based, or a mix of both? I just wanted some more detail about that, because I've had paranoia for a while if I'm doing the right thing, if I'm on the right path as a poli-sci major.
So we've got a bunch of people who look like they want to answer that. Wasn't just anyone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd love to start. I'd love to answer this question. Like I said, I'm on the admissions committee at my school. I can't speak for all schools. And so a little bit of insider secrets here. Whatever classes you took in your undergrad really doesn't matter all that much. I mean, you could have been an engineering student in your undergrad, philosophy, even art, who knows? Really they're gonna look at students as holistically as possible. What you were engaged with outside of school, what kind of clubs you were working with while you were in school, and they're also going to be looking at trends. Okay, from when you started your undergrad, was your grades going up or was it going down? And if they're going down, they're gonna ask, why? Because they want you to start strong when you enter law school. But I wouldn't say that one factor really matters any more than any other factor. I mean, of course, you should always try to do your best. You should try to get a good GPA, a good LSAT. And some of those factors are deal breakers, I would like to think, I would not like to think, but they're deal breakers for some schools. I mean, if you're looking at like a top 10 law school, I mean, you're just not going to get into Harvard with a 2.5 GPA. That goes without saying. But, not everybody's trying to go to Harvard. So like I wouldn't worry about your GPA and LSAT too much. Just try to do as good as you can. Try to stay involved in your community, and then write a really awesome personal statement about why you want to study law. And I honestly, that's enough to get you into law school.
Dahlia and Marcus, your hands are up, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I agree with David completely. It's entirely dependent on where you want to go. I think T14s are like notoriously stringent about what they'll accept. But to be frank and honest, that should not be your focus, because I think anybody can study hard and get a 170. What it's gonna really matter is like if someone's looking at your application and they were to walk away, would they take anything away, or would you be just one of very many other people who are brilliantly smart? And I'll say this, it's incredibly competitive. I'd never really imagined it, but it's also super arbitrary because like these rankings don't really matter. Like I got into Columbia, but I didn't get into NYU. I got waitlisted at Harvard, but I didn't get into, NYU. So like I said, it's like these super like, there's no, you can do everything right and you still might not get in. And that's like not about you so much. I feel like you end up at the school that like welcomes you in a way. And I feel like you really don't want to go to a school that focuses so much on those types of things, because that type of environment might not be where you actually flourish. So I don't know, take it with a grain of salt. Obviously those things matter, but I would ultimately worry about not just your extracurriculars, but what you're able to accomplish with those extracurriculars. So things that you can just put on your resume, like don't do that. That's not good for anybody.
I don't know whether Camry or Marcus, who had hands up earlier, wanted to jump in on this before we go to some additional question. Okay, so we have.
My hand just went up from where? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So Leal.
Hi, yes. So I've been looking to apply to law schools outside of Michigan, but I've spoken to numerous law students. Some told me that it's a bad idea because it would put me at a disadvantage of finding a job once I graduate, mainly because you get your job through internships and through connections made within the state. And then a lot of other people told me that it's a wonderful opportunity and it would not put me at a disadvantage. And I know that everybody here is in school in Michigan, but if you do know other students, friends who are outside of the state, do you think that it did put them at a disadvantage? And do you think that you secure your job through the internships that you gain through networking? And yes, Dahlia, I saw that you said you're going to Colorado. I actually wanted to apply to Boulder law in Colorado. So I was also going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I'll just answer real quickly. I don't think it puts you at a disadvantage. I think there is some truth to where you do your internships is where you line up, but that has more to do with you make connections. And typically if you go the big law route, even public interest, but if you go the big law route, if you work with them like your second year, then they offer you a position. When you graduate, I know that I'm working this summer with an office in Colorado that they're likely, he told me, he's like, we think we want to offer you the fellowship for when you graduate. So like even public interest, you can have that sort of thing. But I go to Michigan, like I would say the only thing is like you might read more cases that have to do with that law. But that's not even true because I feel like I don't really read a lot of Michigan. I read the Michigan Rules of Professional Conduct and the Michigan Rules of Evidence, but those are also federal rules that kind of are adopted by the states and are universal. So I think where you go to school matters only in so much as you put that you make it matter. Like
I could say a few things about this, but Parker and David, you want to say something?
I was just going to say I absolutely agree with what Dahlia said. I think if you go to school in California and you start there and that's where you're making your connections, I don't care if you're from Connecticut or Massachusetts. That's where you're making your connections. Your first year, like that's important. And like Dahlia said, normally where you work your second year is kind of most important for that particular aspect. But I can't say that if I had gone to school out of state and had had the same credentials, that I would have been disadvantaged by going out of state. I mean, they don't know necessarily where you went to undergrad, nor, I mean, they will get your resume, but they won't care at that point, right? I have a friend who grew up here, lived here, went to Wayne State here, and is now going to be working at the AG's office in Washington. It is so completely disconnected, simply based off of where she spent time her first and second year of law school, that I don't think applying out of state currently is going to disadvantage you in a significant way.
David?
Yeah, I don't think it will either. Obviously, I haven't graduated yet, but most of my friends that have graduated law school, especially from Michigan law schools, I mean, they're all over the place. I've got friends in California, I've got quite a few friends in Chicago, some in Minnesota, some in Washington, D.C. I mean, especially with the way the bar exam's going, and we've got the UBE, the Uniform Bar Exam. I just don't. I don't think it's really a factor so much. I think a law degree is a law degree, and I think people are going to think highly for you obtaining that and then passing your bar exam. I don't think it's going to be an issue for any of you.
Yeah, Leo?
Thank you all for answering. I do have one more question. So we were speaking about the letter of recommendations earlier and choosing a professor who you closely connect with rather than somebody who you just have good grades with. I do have a professor who I am very close with, I keep in touch with a lot, and I know that he could say a lot of good things about me, but I'm a bit hesitant to use him because I would say he's not the best writer. Based like I had him for a world's religious class at like a college that I was going to for my prerequisites while I was in high school, but it was counting towards my college credits because it was an early college program. And I have had him write me a letter of recommendation for another class. And while what he said was very, very personal and very nice, and I think put me on like a pedestal, I do know that the style of writing is also very important. And I feel like his style of writing was a bit just it wasn't the best, if I'm being honest. It wasn't the best. Do you think that I should look towards other professors or should I just take that chance if that is something that they would care about?
I would say about this that you should get there. You're going to get more than one letter of recommendation, and a lot of the time, you should certainly have at least one who is a faculty member, who has taught you in a course that has reflects something about the skills that you're going to need for law school. But then you can also get other kinds of recommendations from people like employers and people you've worked with in organizations and so forth. And so certainly if you've got someone who knows you well, who is going to praise you to the sky, you shouldn't feel any hesitation, I think, about getting a letter from that person in addition to letters from other people. Parker, you want to weigh in here?
Yeah, I was just going to say I completely agree with that. Where I, candidly had Dr. Roth write me a recommendation for law school, and I'm sure that was fantastic. I also had my Jewish studies professor, who was just like my 65-year-old grandmother who could say no wrong about me, also write me a recommendation letter. And I can't speak to exactly just how eloquent her writing is, but I also had complete confidence that she would submit a 5-page memorandum of everything that I've done right in life and nothing that I've done wrong. So even if I wasn't confident that she was going to write at some scholarly, prestigious level, I also knew that she was only going to sing my praises. So if you have someone like that, if this is a professor that you connect with and you feel like understands you on some deeper personal level, I would not shy away from that at all. In fact, that can be such an advantage to have someone who admissions committee sees 50 recommendations a day that are, scholarly and candid and to the point. But it may be not, it may not be the case that they see something that's, heartfelt and sentimental in that way. So I guess just judge it based of how close you feel to this person and how much of an asset that can be.
Thank you.
So there are a few other questions in the chat, and rather than try to reproduce them out of there, I'd like it for if people could unmute themselves, and if there are follow-ups to questions that were partly answered, but you want to get something more from. Anybody there? All right. Well, another question that I would pose is about skills that you developed or perhaps didn't develop to the extent that you wish you had as an undergrad that are relevant to law school. What sorts of things do you think people should be working hardest at, given the opportunity as an undergrad, to develop the kinds of skills that are going to come in handy in law school? Cameron?
The skill that I wish I would definitely have developed in undergrad was my studying skills. My studying skills were not the best, just because throughout school has always been easy for me. So studying wasn't ever a priority for me. But then law school, you need to study, you need to memorize these rules, you need to memorize facts and cases. And so that's something that I wish I would have prioritized when I was an undergrad, just kind of getting a handle on study schedules, good study habits. Of course, you're going to have to, develop, because law school is a different breed. You're going to have to develop, something else in law school, but just kind of getting the basics of studying down. Oh, my laptop is about to die. Yeah, I just wish I would have prioritized getting study habits and learning what works best for me in undergrad to prepare me for law school.
Other thoughts? Parker?
I don't know if it's necessarily a skill, but I think getting involved with different sections of the state bar that your school is involved in, I think was a great opportunity that I really only utilized my second year. And you can do it from day one. A lot of these bar sections will kind of waive dues and fees and whatnot for students. But the business or tax section of the Michigan bar, like their association, like stuff that I wasn't super interested in, but like could have gotten a better perspective of early on. The amount of events that they actually put on, the prominence of the speakers that they bring in, these types of things are just great networking opportunities to take advantage of when you're a student. And I think, at least for a couple of my friends, they've opened a lot of doors that I think would have previously been closed. So just taking advantage of those types of free resources that are accessible to you as first year law students is, I think, important.
Other thoughts? Well, my general question for people, and I maybe put each of you on the spot with respect to this, is what's the one thing you wish you had known when you were an undergrad that you know now? This is the big opportunity for you to impart the wisdom of your experience.
I think I know.
Yep. Go ahead.
Honestly, I've had a really enlightening experience in law school in concluding that law school really isn't what it's cracked up to be. This profession, while it's great, I think it has a lot of opportunity for really good things to happen. This is an elitist system and it's incredibly corrupt, and you can do your part in it, but it's I don't know. I've always been passionate. I've always cared a lot about the world around me. And I'm in these rooms, and I don't know, y'all. Like, I don't know. So I'm gonna do my best, and like, it is what it is. But I really, really, especially those of you that are gonna take on debt to do this, like, it's not worth this. Like, I come from, I'm a child of immigrants, so I know the pressure of like, you have to be doctor, lawyer, engineer. Like, there's 3 choices. There's so many choices. There's so many opportunities. There's so many things. Like, do what makes you happy. Don't do something like to go to a school. Like, none of that is going to matter. And I would not be in law school still if I didn't genuinely care about what I was doing, because I would have quit. Yo, after that first semester, they had me. You know what? That's all I can say is I wish I had known how much it really wasn't like the change and social like sword I wanted it to be.
Marcus.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I believed I wanted to go to law school in undergrad, but then I read one of these law school, one of these books about getting into law school, and they had recommended that you work for a firm or something like that, just to see what the work was like. So I did, but you know, one thing happens to another and life happens. And you may not get back to law school if you try that. I think it's good to just go straight out of undergrad. I kind of wish I had done that. And yeah, that was what I wish I knew when I was an undergrad or after undergrad.
Okay. David?
It's so weird hearing you speak, Dahlia, because I know exactly what you're talking about, even though you might not even get into specifics. But I guess my tidbit is something I was told in my 1L, and that is, hey, respectability politics. It has a body count, and so, you know, I'll leave that open to interpretation by all of you. But I guess my point is, you don't got to sacrifice anything about who you are or what you believe to be here. Okay, there are some people that would like you to conform to a certain type of lawyer, I guess, or a type of student. You don't got to do all that. You know, just be who you are. Don't compromise your beliefs, and then I think you'll make it through law school a happy individual. I've seen a lot of people come into law school with smiles on their faces, and you know, and by the 3rd year, they're pretty bitter people. I think it has something to do with, you know, sacrificing who they were a little bit. And so, you know, just believe in yourself. Don't give them an inch.
Okay. Parker?
I think the thing that I wish I had known was that it's okay to set boundaries, and it's okay to not feel the need to do everything that you did before law school. You should obviously still maintain individualism and a habit and things that bring you joy, but it is okay to tell people that you're burnt out, and it's okay to tell people that you need time to yourself, and it's okay to set those boundaries. You can't constantly be accessible to everyone all the time. And there's going to be a lot of people who don't understand, especially your first year, how time consuming law school is, because they'll look at it and they'll just be like, you have one exam at the end of the semester. All you do is read. Like, you can't take one day off, or like, you can't do this. And I'm not saying don't make time for those people. I'm just saying don't compromise what you feel like is the best path to success for you. Don't get pressured into giving away more of yourself than you think you should or can. That's something that I was so guilty of my first year, and I ended up really regretting my choice of law school. And I realized that it wasn't law school that it was doing, you know, that was producing these effects. It was the fact that I was really overstretching myself. So I would just say be careful with your time is an important thing.
Okay. Camry, did you have any last words on this topic by any chance?
Honestly, I don't have anything I wish I would have known. Just because law school, it was just, I don't know. I don't think it was anything that could prepare me. I've always been a person that like Parker said, like I can say no, and I always like to do things that I love. Like I'm not the type of person that's like, oh, you know, I'm giving up who I am to be, you know, this person. Like I don't know, law school is just different. Like what Dahlia said, it's so crazy. It's nothing I could have imagined. It is a elite society where it's kind of like, I feel like you're just like trying to fight to the top. And it's like, why do you have to fight so hard, you know, to do what you love? But maybe that's what I wish I would have known, that you're gonna have to fight really, really hard to do what you love, and you have to just make sure you know that it's worth it at the end of the day, because you don't want to go through 3 years of law school, get all the debt, and then end up dropping out. And I know that it was a couple people after our first year, we never saw them again. after the first semester, we never saw them again. Because I said, if this is not what you want, you should get out immediately. So just know, like, is this something that is worth fighting for? That's all I would have wished I would have known. Like, is this something worth fighting for? If it is, go for it. If it's not, find something else.
Okay. Are there any other questions that people have for our panelists before I turn off the recording and end the formal aspect of this? People might hang around for further discussion, but other questions before we head on? Going once, going twice.
It seems like Ola had a question in the chat.
Yeah.
You talk more about big law.
Okay.
I'm happy to start, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm an incoming associate at Jones Day, which is a very large firm. I applied to a lot of large firms during my second year. I got callbacks with a bunch of them. I only got offers from 2 of them. I think it's very hit and miss to think that you may just, you may be top of your class. You may be doing everything that you think you should be doing, and expect that type of position. I think it's just so individualized. I don't know if you're necessarily more asking about applications to big law or like experience in big law. I can really only speak to my experience this summer, but I just know, at least in terms of the application process, it's so hit and miss and what people are looking for. I've got friends who outrank me in class rankings that didn't get the job that I got. I've got other people who, are lower than in class rank than other people who got big law jobs, and people higher than me that didn't. It's a crapshoot, truly.
Any other thoughts from the panelists or any other questions? By the way, anyone who would like to be in touch with me about any of this stuff can feel free to be in touch by email. Even though I'm on leave this semester, I'm still available by email and by Zoom. brad.roth@wayne.edu. And in addition to being the undergraduate director in political science, I jointly appointed in the law school. I had a brief practice career before. As I like to say, I went back to school for 5 years to make half my salary. And so I have my own perspectives on a great many aspects of all of this. And I'm always happy to talk with people who would like to, kick around ideas about legal careers and legal education. So again, brad.roth@wayne.edu. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to come do this, and particularly our panelists who are hard at work in law school and have come from all of these different schools to give a wide range of perspectives on the law school experience. So thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you guys for coming and spending some time. I know you guys are super busy to share your experiences with us to help us get to where you guys are at. And hopefully one day we'll be where you're at, talking with Dr. Roth's, future students. But thank you guys.
So I will turn off the recording now. And